the Rangers Journal Line.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Rangers Journal podcast. My name's Scotty and I'm delighted to be rejoined again by Gully, who was on last year talking to us about Fabio Silva. Gully, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you, mate. Not too bad. I remember being quite positive about Fabio and it not really coming to pass, did it? But please excuse me on that one.
It was all right. I mean, it wasn't the worst player that we've ever had on loan, but
Yeah.
I think he's fulfilling his potential out Las Palmas now, though, isn't he?
Yeah, he's definitely done the things I've probably said he would do for you at Las Palmas. So I'm glad. I think he's had a bit of a rough ride coming in as a teenager at Wolves, but glad to see he's doing well now.
Do you think he's going to make the move permanent?
He won't be going there. I'm pretty certain he won't be going there. He will be going to another either La Liga or possibly Bundesliga side. I think quite a few teams who are on the verge of Europe have expressed their interest, and looks like we might get up to 20 million for him, which should be a bit of a result, to be fair. So yeah.
Well, today obviously is a pod's title. We're going to speak about Gary O'Neill. So quickly, what I know about him is he came on at Bournemouth and done a decent job, I would say. Very good job, kept them up in the Premier League. And then all of a sudden he ended up with Wolves, I think. When he left Bournemouth, it wasn't great circumstances, but I don't think it was because of job performance. So tell me a wee bit about what you know about him this time at Wolves.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to kind of talk about, to be fair. O'Neill, for me, the first 2 seasons of his career, he kind of landed in positions where it was almost crisis situations. Obviously, Bournemouth, I think, had just lost like 9-0 when he got appointed as manager. His first game was against Wolves and stunk the place out, drew 0-0, and then obviously got them to stay up. And then he came in at Wolves 4 days before the start of the season, having had an absolute terrible summer from a Wolves perspective for recruitment, unable to bring in any players and whatnot. But it was strange to think that fundamentally he was successful in both of those seasons. I think we were probably tipped as potential relegation candidates when he came in. Having had the summer that we'd had, we ended up doing a little bit of business because we sold Mateus Nunes for quite a large fee to Man City. But ultimately, he wasn't like he was coming in and managing his group of players at all. And to think that we did what we did up until around January, February, when injuries started to take their toll, I was really impressed. I think as a coach, he showed a hell of a lot. And I still believe he's a really, really good coach. We then had issues with a forward line that was basically left. I mean, going back to Fabio Silva, there's important context here where he went out on loan. We had Sasha Kalajdzic as well, who went out on loan. And what ended up happening was he narrowed down his forward options to just basically Mateus Cunha, Pedro Neto, and Juan Chan. And the 3 of them were playing really well, scoring goals. But I think the season started to take its toll on them a little bit. Kwang went away to the Asia Cup, got injured, was never the same from that point onwards. Neto, typically quite injury prone anyway, wasn't able to sustain a regular run of games thereafter as well. So it left Cunha, who was kind of holding it all together a little bit, and then he got injured. And we hadn't brought anybody in January, having let Fabio go, having let Sasha go. And we just didn't have any options really to sustain for the rest of the season. So we fell off a cliff entirely. I think because we were quite comfortable in mid-table, the club didn't really want to back in to sign anyone who may or may not have been that great. They're not keen on doing a lot of business in January, generally speaking. Yeah. And we suffered as a result. But all told, that first season was really, really promising. And then we get into this season, which was a bit of a car crash when it comes to results specifically. Yeah. I mean, go ahead. Yeah, I could talk for days about this stuff, but I think he's obviously quite an inexperienced coach, having only had those 2 seasons. And the thought that I would have had is that he's got his first opportunity, a proper pre-season. He has a transfer window to kind of shape the kind of team that he wants to manage, and that should give him a platform to probably have even more success. We lost Neto and we lost Max Kilman, who I think was probably the bigger, more damaging miss when it came to the start of this season. And we didn't replace Kilman with a player who you would come in and say had the same kind of stature. We had a lad called Yusuf Mosquera who came in, really talented, but has been injury prone in the past. He ended up doing his ACL quite early on. He looked really promising, but that really, really killed us. And the other thing that I think really damaged O'Neill and his credibility within the squad was he was consistently trying to get rid of Jose Sarr, who's our goalkeeper. And we ended up having this mad kind of summer being linked to like Aaron Ramsdale quite heavily. He ended up going to Southampton. We ended up signing Sam Johnston from where was he? Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace. And it kind of just ended up being this weird situation where I don't think Johnson was necessarily the kind of player that he wanted, but him and Neil Cutler, who was the goalkeeping coach, just really didn't fancy Sarr at all. And Sarr, for all of his qualities, is not the most assured keeper anyway. So to then kind of not give him the confidence of your, team selection and you're my undisputed number one made him a bit more of a liability defensively as well. And it all kind of combined into this mishmash of Sarr not being solid to start the season. We'd brought in a new set piece coach as well to specifically look after our set pieces, and that all went to absolute shit. And we were the worst team by far on set pieces. Not necessarily suggesting it was absolutely one bloke's fault, but having been quite solid on that front previous year, we absolutely lost any ability to defend set pieces. And individual mistakes started to creep in. We had a really, really hard fixture list to start with as well. And we then find ourselves down the bottom end of the table, having given O'Neill a new contract in the summer as well, which I think probably prolongs the suffering more than it should have, because I don't think the club were willing to sack him sooner.
What's the kind of general opinion from the Wolves fans on Gary O'Neill now then?
I can't say I speak for the fan base in this sense. There's kind of a deep-seated kind of real anger about O'Neill. I don't think that what was on the pitch was reflective of his abilities as a coach at all. Right. I think all the other stuff around it, and he'll have learned a lot from this season, managing the group. His captain lost his head. Mario Lemina, who was player of the year for us the season before, gives him the armband. The group lost discipline, and some of the guys that were kind of the leadership team of that group, Mateus Cunha included as well, who you've seen has kind of had his moments this year as well, just didn't really deliver for him in terms of managing the slide and the lack of form and all that sort of stuff. We became a really emotional team. People just losing their heads all over the place, making bad decisions, running around chasing stuff during games that they shouldn't be doing. They had no discipline within games to kind of, if we conceded a goal, to sit in and say, okay, let's just kind of manage the game, etc., etc. And that all clashed with what I would say. I don't think he set the team up badly, really. And people will argue with me on this, but I'd like to think I know what I'm watching and know what I'm seeing. But all the other stuff around it, him managing the group and all that sort of stuff that you need as a head coach, is where he was lacking. And it's become, having really been quite promising last year, a really kind of sour end to the relationship, which I was disappointed with.
What would you say is his biggest strength then, as a manager?
I think he has an ability to improve players. On the training pitch, I think you will see him do his best work. Pretty much every player in the squad, I would say, compared to when O'Neill joined the club, improved, especially the players that he used regularly. Someone like Mateus Cunha, who we know is likely to move on to bigger and better things in the summer. Well, maybe not better, but bigger things. Like to go to Man United. But he does not have the success that he's had in the last 2 seasons without Gary O'Neill. Gary O'Neill platformed him to deliver what he has in that time. Ryan Aït-Nouri is another one, unbelievably good footballer who has gone on to produce his best kind of goals and assist numbers to date this year. So I think his ability to kind of just take individuals, work on the game, and set up a tactical plan to kind of bring the best out of them during games was absolutely what I would say is his strength. But I think it kind of led to his downfall a little bit as well, because he is quite, I wouldn't say he's a control freak, but he likes being in charge of what's going on the pitch to a certain extent. We know in the final third it's difficult to do, but the build up, setting, pressing, patterns, all that sort of stuff, he's quite big on. And there was a famous Monday Night Football appearance that he made, having beaten Man City last year, where he kind of broke down a lot of the stuff that he does in training, which I think was really, really interesting and insightful. And I think I'd recommend any Rangers fans to go and watch that.
You mentioned his tactical plan and style of play then. So what is it? Does he build out for the back? Does he like a high press? How does his teams play?
He's quite, I think he does like to tailor things to the opposition. I think he looks at opposition teams and very much focuses on how he can exploit their weaknesses, as opposed to having an overarching, this is how I want to play. We kind of flitted between semi back three, back four systems during his entire time. I think probably just to try and get, especially Aït-Nouri and Cunha, into the best positions on the pitch possible versus the opposition they were going to be playing. So I think, again, that what we've done since and why we've improved is because I think we were changing every week to try and combat a slide in form and a slide in results. And I think the players needed a little bit more structure and solidity around what they were trying to do. So maybe he'll decide to change and have a bit more of a philosophy and have a bit more of a stick to, this is exactly how I want my teams to play, kind of thing. But that'll come down to the players that he has at his disposal as well.
From an outside looking in, I think selling Kilman and Neto ultimately, it's not caused Wolves' form under him in his second season, but it played a big part in my opinion.
Yeah. I think the narrative will always kind of come out like that. I will say he didn't, like I say, he didn't help himself in certain areas. The goalkeeper situation, I think, particularly, just did him no favors. But we then signed a new centre half in January, who I think is one of the best centre halves in the Premier League now, in Emmanuel Agbadou, and all of a sudden we're a much more solid team. If that was something that we'd done in the summer, I think Gary O'Neill might even still be in a job at Wolves, to be honest, because he still had the capability of putting out a team that could get results in the Premier League.
Yeah. How did they deal with the pressure this season in terms of where Wolves were in the league?
Well, totally capitulated, right? It was seriously alarming, to be honest. I know there was his last game was against Ipswich at home. I didn't go because my wife was due to give birth like any day at that point, and I'm quite glad I wasn't there. But you saw probably the scenes of Matheus Cunha grabbing the guy's glasses off his face and getting sent off at the end of the game. Ryan Aït-Nouri was being manhandled. We had the scenes at West Ham where Sean Derry and Mario Lemina were going head to head at the end of the game, having lost. That was all just literally. I think the team knew themselves they shouldn't be in this situation. We've got a much better level of playing squad than what was being shown, and that frustration obviously built out. And some of it was fine margins, but some of it we'd basically give teams a goal at the start of games, and then you're fighting consistently to try and chase, and we ended up just making mistake after mistake after that. So yeah, I think that's something he would need to try and handle himself and manage a group of players much better.
How do you think he would cope with the need to win at Rangers every week? Obviously, it's a two-team league we're in. You need to win every week. A draw is a disaster. A loss is a catastrophe. How do you think he would deal with that pressure?
I think it's a totally different challenge compared to the ones he's been in, right? And that's probably something that you'd need to consider if you was to appoint him. That he's not been, the guy that's managing a team that is expected to win every week. He famously made a quote earlier on in the season where he was saying, if you look at the odds every week, we're probably going to be the underdogs in every game, and that was kind of taken probably out of context slightly and used against him as we kept losing games. So it would be an interesting challenge for him, but like you say, it's that expectation level that you've got at a club like Rangers that you just need to make sure you're giving that impression that you want to go out and win games. And I think he will. I think he'd want his team to be out on the front foot every single week and dominating games, controlling possession, penning teams back, all that sort of stuff. And I think he's capable of coming up with good plans to break teams down because he sees detail and he'll spot stuff like that. So it'll then just become, if you do have a run of games where things don't quite go to plan, how things start to go after that.
Yeah. So it sounds as if, it's not that he didn't have a great rapport with the players, but it sounds as if that's his kind of biggest weakness, is the discipline side of things.
It's funny because there was, you wouldn't believe any of the players disliked him, and I don't think they did. What I think his issue was, he was probably a bit too close to them to a certain extent. He didn't have that ability to apply discipline. Right. And someone like Vitor Pereira's come in, probably a bit more distant to the players, but they know where they stand and they know if there is a lack of respect or a lack of buying into the idea of the team, they're not going to play. O'Neill never really had that kind of mandate with the group. I think he was a bit of a softly approach manager who the players could probably sway a little bit more. And that's one thing I think that he did do. We lost a game 6-2 to Chelsea, second game of the season this year, where everything went to pot in the first half.
Yeah.
Early in the second half, Noni Madueke scored a hat-trick after calling Wolverhampton a shit city, if you remember. But he then decided to kind of change tack after that one result, and I thought we had a really good pre-season. We actually played quite well on opening day against Arsenal. Then that happened, and I thought he just lost his sense of what he wanted to achieve, and I think that didn't help.
How far do you see him going in the game? Do you think he's going to have a good managerial career? What would you think his level's at?
It's hard to say. I think his next job will dictate whether he manages to get back into the Premier League or not. I think he probably should take, like I say, Rangers is an unbelievable opportunity, I think, because there's a potential of being in Europe and all that sort of stuff that goes with it. Or if he can get kind of a high-flying championship team job, that's probably where he needs to go out and win games every week, build confidence in his own idea, and then really start to make a name for himself again. Because his entry into coaching was very strange, very weird. 2 jobs where he's just been dropped in it and he's just kind of got to make it up as he goes along to a certain extent. So I think he could do with a bit more of a solid footing somewhere. Start pre-season somewhere, really build an understanding of the squad, and then take it from there.
Aye, fair enough, mate. Fair enough. Well, thank you for coming on. Do you want to tell folk where they can find you?
Yeah, it's at Molyneux Musings on Twitter, and I feature on the Talking Wolves YouTube channel.
Perfect. Like I've said to you last time, if you ever need anything else, just give me a DM. But thank you for coming on, mate.
No trouble, mate. Cheers.
Right, cheers.